of me. I was born and raised in a small town in California called Los Angeles. You may have heard of that. Stayed in the same house until I got married. Was married after moved 9 blocks away, and was there for 2 years until the Army decided they wanted me. When I got back from Vietnam, I was as a first lieutenant. I was assigned to Fort Jackson Mars Station. Those are the days when the Army and Air Force had active Mars stations all the time. And I walked in the door as newly officer in charge. And I don't know if anybody have been in the military before, but this E7 sergeant was sitting at the desk and he says, "Lieutenant, sit down. This is what we're going to do." Now, I learned a long time ago that officers don't run the service, the enlisted men do. And so I listened, and he says, "Do you have an amateur radio license?" And I said, "No." He said, "You will have. Next Monday, you're to report to the code school, which is on the same base." So I went for 13 weeks to learn Morse code. When I could pass 15 word a minute, sending and receiving, he sent me to Fort McPherson, Georgia, which is outside of Atlanta, where the FCC office was at, and I took my test and became a general. Stayed that way till 75, when I upgraded to advanced in Long Beach, California, and then upgraded to extra at Visalia about 2004. I was very active, and then what happened is I moved to Tucson in '85 and got very active in amateur radio, and then somewhere along the line, about '93, Bernie Sasek, who was a member of the Southern Arizona DX Club, said that, "Oh, by the way, I'm not running for section manager anymore. Would you like to take the job?" And I says, "Well, I'm not sure if I want to do that. I better ask my wife first if she wants to allow me to do it." 2 days later, I get a call from the Southwest Division Director, Fried Hein, and it says, "I'm glad you've accepted." So anyway, I stayed that way for 12 years, was very active in Arizona, moved to Grove City, Ohio in 2017 from Tucson. Now, if people ask me why, well, I say very simply, my kids are in Columbus. And I had an offer I couldn't refuse. My youngest boy, who's going to be my caregiver, said, "Dad, now that you've retired for the 3rd time, you're moving to Columbus." Mm-hmm. And I said, "I don't want to move out there. You have white stuff that comes down from the sky." He said, "Dad, you don't understand. I'm going to be your caregiver, and it will not take place in Tucson, so you might as well move out here and enjoy it while you can." So I did. Anyway, back in 2012, I went to the Arizona State Hamfest, of which at that time I happened to be the president of the ARCA, the Amateur Radio Council of Arizona, and was out there, and this friend of mine come back and said, talked to me, and he said, "How would you like to go on a DXpedition again?" And I said, "Where to?" He said, "Banaba Island, T33. And I said, "Where is that?" He said, "In the middle of the South Pacific." "How much is it going to cost?" He said, "Probably about $7,500 total." So I says, "Well, I had best find out if my wife will allow me to spend the money, because that's an awful lot of money to come out of a year's budget." So I drove home, and she said, "Go for it." So I went. Anyway, so this is what we did. Banaba Island is out. I wish I had my pointer. I lost
Well,
it.
this got a pointer on it.
Huh? It does?
Yeah. Hit the top.
Ah, right there. Okay, good. Banaba Island is right there in the middle of the South Pacific. And there's the Marshall Islands. You can see that, and some of the other places. It's out in the middle of nowhere. The previous DXpedition went there was in 1974 when it was owned by the British. So, I just wanted to give you an idea. Like I said, it's out in the middle of nowhere. Now, let's see if I can. Does this thing work?
Go. Here, I'll start your slideshow for you.
Oh, we gotta start the slideshow, okay. I thought it was, yeah, you're right, it's not a slideshow. How many people in 2013 worked this? One guy. I did all single sideband, most of the single sideband.
I did all CW, 10, 15, and 20.
Single CW is continuous wave. You have no intelligence with a continuous wave. That's my idea of CW.
I
Anyway,
thought it was
say again. There we go. We had to fly. I flew from Tucson to Los Angeles, Los Angeles to Fiji. Fiji, we stayed 2 days. Went to Tarawa. Now, people, you know what Tarawa Island is, right?
Yeah.
That's from World War II. We stayed there a day and a grand total of 6 hours. Got on a boat and went 240 nautical miles by boat, 2-day trip to Banaba Island. That's how you get there. There's no airplane. There's no landing strip. You can take a helicopter. The helicopter would get there, but it could not get back because it's too far away for a standard helicopter. Anyway, that's what the island looks like. It's basically a teardrop. They call it the Teardrop Island. That's their nickname for it. If you remember now, there. We had 2 sites. Single sideband site there and the CW site there. That road there was about 2 clicks. To get there, you walked back and forth. There was no such thing as, we had a vehicle. I'll explain what would happen when we get there. Oh, wrong way. Try the other way. Okay. Anyway, the Banaba Island is now a part of the Republic of Kiribati, which is a country. An island country that's out in the middle of nowhere with Tarawa as its capital. It was there's a little history of it, but I'll only go back. The Japanese forces occupied it in 1942 till the end of the war. No, we did not do a landing and kick them off. We left them there, and then they got off on their own at the end of the war because there's nothing there worth our stuff. The British took it over again and kept it for phosphate mining until 1979. And believe it or not, they stripped away about 90% of the island's surface for phosphate. We'll get into that. Following the end of their mining, they finally got to the point where it was not economical to further mine the country. They gave it back in 2001.
Oh, that's real nice.
Yeah, it was real nice of them, wasn't it? So anyway, I don't know how many of you people been on DXpeditions, but logistics is important. You just don't take your stuff, arrive, set up antennas. You were talking about setting up antennas ahead of time for next week's thing. You just don't say, here, it's time to go. We shipped a container full of stuff. Oh, come on now, Cliff. Oh, I'm not used to this pointer. Sorry about that. There we go. We shipped a container full of stuff to include everything. We had to take everything with us. We took 6 stations. We took all the antennas for 2 sites, 80 through 10, single band antennas, not dual band, single band antennas. And we decided to take this. This worked great for 3 days till someone decided to pop the clutch and broke the drive shaft. So we walked from then on. But anyway, the supplies were shipped out of Los Angeles to Tarawa by ship. It took 4 months to get there. So that's how far in advance we had to plan for this. I arrived in Fiji. This is for the first 2 nights, and the reason we stayed in Fiji is because of airplane scheduling, not because we wanted to. This was our host while we were in Fiji. He is an amateur radio operator. By the way, that hood of his car, he painted himself. We had a couple of the Germans that decided they wanted to set up and operate from Fiji, from our hotel room. The guy gave us permission to do what we wanted. He didn't care as long as we didn't burn down the place or damage it. He didn't care. Jay, by the way, lives in Lebanon, Ohio, and he and I are both now members of the Southwest DX Club out of Dayton. There's Robert operating one of the stations. These were simple stations they set up in their room. Me, I wanted to go see what Fiji looked like. I'm more of a tourist guy. So I asked the guy in front, how do you get to downtown? He says, you walk out the street, catch the bus, and go. So I did. I mean, I'm by myself, out traipsing around, doesn't bother me a bit. So I get down and you see the town, and this is their open market. People have never been to an open market or in for a surprise. Fresh vegetables, yes. Go back. Fresh everything, to include fowl, pigs, just killed and skinned right there. Anyway, the town was very nice. It was very, what I call modern. It had cell phone tower. See that? Electricity. The kids there were like any kids we have here. They must have their cell phones. Each one had to have their own cell phone. So it was very big there. Anyway, the last day we were there, all of us went out to eat, and I called this our last supper, because that was the last time we sat down for a meal till we got back to Tarawa 3.5 weeks later. We arrived in Tarawa. That's your terminal. Modern, very modern. Your passport entry. I thought that was pretty cool. Luggage. They didn't inspect it. You just picked it up and walked away. They didn't care. This is what our meeting place was, out on the opposite side of the island from the airport, where we met everybody. We sat down and had a lunch while we discussed what's going to happen. And Arnold there, N6HC, is a doctor. He was our official doctor on this trip. So we did have medical. We loaded our luggage. We were going to a boat. They told us this was it. I looked a little skeptical. But we settled on this one here, which is this is a catamaran, by the way. We loaded everything in. And I mean, you take everything. Water, food, supplies, everything you could possibly need. 2 decks were nothing but supplies. Then we have to remember we're here for 2 days. Sleeping arrangements on the boat. That's how you slept, because there was really nothing to do. Really, for 2 days there was nothing to do. Crossing the equator, going southbound on my 70th birthday, 360 degrees, nothing but water, and it's 5,000 feet deep. I'm trying to figure out what got myself into, because I am not a Navy guy. I'm Army, solid ground. Anyway, after everybody got in to take pictures of the compass, I missed it a little bit, but not by much. That was the GPS on board the boat. I call it a boat. They call it a ship. There is a difference.
That would go on an aircraft carrier. That makes that one a boat.
This is a boat. Anyway, we finally they pointed out Banaba Island, and we were still 10 kilometers away. That is it. We arrived. That is the loading dock, where you load and offload your supplies. The water inside there is about 10 feet deep. Now, it used to be 30 feet, but since 1979, has made it a little different. That was the dock. That's how you unloaded and loaded supplies. Not by much. This is it. The important thing is, Carl, as far as the Germans were concerned, the beer. They went through their beer. They went through a lot of beer while we were there for 3 weeks. Anyway, there's 2 trucks on the island which we commandeered to put our supplies in. And we started up. That is our headquarters. That is the same building that was used in the 1974 DXpedition with no improvements. Nothing. That's all we got. We made it work though. You can see all the supplies loaded underneath the overhang. Because it does rain, so we had to put everything under cover. We did not bring any 10 by 10 umbrellas, anything like that. No. We did bring a couple things I'll show you. This is what we slept on again, cots. 2 floors of cots. Ricky, the guy from Brazil that was with us, was walking across the floor on the 2nd floor and his foot went right through the floor. That's the hole that he made in the floor. That's why we had to be careful. Nothing serious, but he did get, as you can see, it did scrape it up a teeny bit. Okay, looking from the front porch. This is what you see. Now, this is an old power pole, which when the British were there, they ran power wires and had lights, street lights. That's an old cement mixer that's been sitting there since the British left. The people have never moved it. All right? And that's the only paved road that goes up about almost up to the barracks, which I'll show you a copy of the picture of the old barracks, the workers' barracks. That's as far as it goes, down from the ocean. Everything else is dirt. We started putting up antennas. Again, notice, single dipole, they're dipoles in the upright position. They worked, all of them, every one of them, they worked great. Except for 30, 40, and 80. All the rest of the antennas in both sites were dipoles in the vertical position. There's a couple more, and see the old water tower? That is still standing. That's how the locals also use that water tower. I'll show you a little later some of the ductwork they use to get the water down to their homes. There is no water on the island. They have a well that's 143 feet deep. You can walk down to it, but the water tastes like sulfur. It is undrinkable. So there is no water on the island. They get their water by rain. That's all how the locals get their water. That's a typical building that they live in at this time. The locals live in. Now, these buildings are left over from when the British moved out in '79. They have not improved any. They have not made changes. The local people, there's about a total of about 300 to 350 people on the island. That's all the island can support. And they are fed by boats, a boat that comes once a month with supplies from Kiribati. The government basically feeds them. They have fish, chicken, and hogs. And then the government brings in the other stuff they need. Typical, in our days it's called welfare. Same thing. Anyway, again, there's our 40 and 80 vertical, one of the ones at the single sideband site, and there's the flags of the 3 countries that were represented: U.S., Germany, and Brazil. Notice the oops, get down here, Cliff. Notice the raised radials. We did raised radials because they're sort of better, and besides, when you're walking at nighttime, you won't trip over them. That was our schedule. We had basically 3-hour shifts. 3 hours on, 6 hours off, 3 hours on, 6 hours off. But whoever made the schedule, I haven't figured it out because 90% of the time I was either on the 12 to 3 or 3 to 6 shift at night. I haven't figured out why, but that's the way it came out. But being new to this with that team, I is expected. That is a typical station. You have the K3, the 500 watt amplifier, and a computer, and a power supply, and a light. That's it. There were 6 of them. 3 in the single sideband and three in the CW portion. We did have the only means of since there was no cell phone coverage. We did set up one of the Los Angeles section manager brought his own personal radio, and we strung up a dipole antenna, and we used the WinLink, HF WinLink, while we were there. So that's how we did messages back and forth. And that worked good. My boss was very happy from Raytheon when I told him I was still alive. Yes?
Is it still 240, 50 hertz for the British?
What? There was no power.
Okay.
There was 0 power on the island. I'll show when I get to it. I'll show you when we'll get there. All right. We use filters. Every antenna had its own personal filter. That was to prevent interference, which worked fantastic. There's David operating. He lives in Florida. There's all of us. This is another David. This is the Los Angeles section manager at the time. Jay was here. Was the I call him the boss of the trip. And John N7CQQ lives in Lawton, Oklahoma. He's still there. The CW site, we took over their soccer field. This was their bleachers. To keep it out of the rain, we brought along the plastic and we covered it so everybody could stay out of the rain, and that was the 3 sites up there. Again, each site operated 24 hours. And we operated for 13 days. Erecting the antennas. I see if I can do this quickly enough because they tried 160. They did not get the desired effect, but we tried it anyway. You know how it just bowed itself up. There's the other CW side antennas, some of them. Again, notice the raised radials and also the vertical dipoles, all of them. I'll quickly go through them. I like HF, by the way. And by the way, this is how we powered everything. We had shipped out there 11 55-gallon drums of gasoline. We used all but 4 during this time. There's what you ran. We had 3 generators, 2 8.5s and 1 12.5. The 12.5 was used down at the single sideband site because that also ran the kitchen. And those are Generac. I bought them from a company in Lake Havasu. They shipped them to me, and I put them in the garage. My wife got mad because now her car can't fit in the garage. And I put them all together and fired them up, and they worked the first time. No questions, they worked. And they ran 24 hours a day. The only time they were off is every 100 hours. We turned the generator off, and in this case we used the backup to keep them going, but we turned the generator off to change the filter and the oil. I was very impressed with those generators. We had to have our luxuries. You have water, we had refreshments, we had an ice maker at both sites, and we had a refrigerator so people could put in their water or the beer to keep it cold. At both sides, little small refrigerators. And by the way, go back. This right here, Bufong 2-meter set, we took along 4 of them. I bought one. I said if salt water gets to it, it would cost me $35.72. I figure if salt water got to it and I never used it again, it was fine. It's still working. Can't believe it. It's still working after all these years. Anyway, we got 4 of them, and that way we had a backup, but we wanted to have communications between the 2 sites. That was our kitchen. The lady there was high, and the gentleman there were both hired to do our cooking. They came along for the cooking.
Looks like my kitchen when I was 20.
Yeah. The other good point, this lady here spoke their language, which is very important because it's a form of Polynesian which is different from Hawaii, Fiji, and Amber. They have their own language on this island, and she spoke their language, which helped. This was our typical, you could count on pancakes in the morning, lunch you made yourself with a sandwich. I had ham and cheese, peanut butter and jelly, variety of sandwiches you made yourself. Dinner was cooked very nicely and we had fish, beef, pork, ham. I haven't figured out why I lost 5 pounds on that trip. I didn't, but I did, which was unusual, because I ate real good. This is a typical inside showing all some of the supplies. We had a big freezer for the kitchen to store things. All the others, and the water. And people wonder why I do not like Niagara water, bottled water. Because I don't drink beer. Beer makes me sick along with coffee. So, this is where we use what we used for showers. You use their non-potable water. This is how they collected the rainwater. We called it non-potable. They drank it because their bodies are accustomed to that type. We're not. And none of us got sick, which was good. But that's how they collect water and they keep it. It rained twice while we were there, and both times at nighttime, and it was not a heavy rain, it was just a light rain, so it wasn't bad. Toilet facilities. This is in the building, they had this. No plumbing and no water. Useless. That was ours. Army field trips. That's all I classified it as. There was the generator for the single sideband site. We put up the tent to cover it, to keep it out of the rain and out of the sun. And we did notice the fire extinguishers. We had 2, 1 for each site. We did not have to use them. Like I said, they ran and never stopped. There's what the single sideband site looked like, all 3 stations. And yes, I was there. I had them take my picture so to prove I was there, because I was doing all the picture taking. Nobody, Ann and myself, one of the 2 other ladies, was the only 2 people that took pictures. So we passed them out to everybody. That's the WinLink system, and that's Dominic, and that's it. You can see his beer there. Chair replacement. The plastic chairs did not last very long. They broke down after about the first week. Don't ask me why, but they did. So we had to improvise. Now, I bring this up because I was the ex-section manager of Arizona, and David was the section manager of Los Angeles, a member of the Southwest Division. We're both together. And I also brought that up because we had a deal going when we arrived, who was going to shave first. I lasted 11 days and I couldn't stand it any longer. He won. These are some of the kids there. On the island, you have basically two types of people. You have children, kids with parents with small children, or senior adults. Senior adults out there is 45 or more. The lifespan is not very long. Very few last much longer than 55.
Oh, really?
Say again?
No, you said really.
Yeah. So there's some of the kids. That building right there is what the government provided. They call it their community center. It has a solar-powered amplifier, PA amplifier. And that's all that's there. Everything else is by them. They have to take care of themselves in their own facilities. But the kids were everywhere. We would be out 2 a.m. in the morning, and the kids would show up wanting to know, just to look and see what we're doing. I'm surprised that I ask them about school. They go to school until the 4th grade, and then they're on their own after that. So there is no education as we know it whatsoever. That's our cook with some of the people she knew from previously being on the island, some of the kids. Now the island people are fishermen, as you saw the first time with the boats. They have little small boats and they have motors on them. And they have scooters for the island. So there is some sort of transportation. But they get the fishing. That's what they do basically for a living, is fish. They had a big council, big meeting with all the people of the island as we were leaving. And the island has its own council members. And those are the 3 right there. And believe it or not, they were not the oldest people on the island. There was one lady that she said she was 71 years old. And she'd been there all her life, except for the time that she had to get off when the Japanese had the island. And the Japanese occupied the island. They kicked all the natives off, and they wouldn't allow them back on. And the British, when they took back over, the British allowed them to come back. Now, medical. That's the medical facility. There is no active nurse on the island. They have a lady that has, quote, medical training that takes care of everything. We took Dr. Jay Garthlitz, who's a dentist, and he wanted to come along to do some dentistry work and help the natives out there. And by the way, that lady is the, quote, nurse of the island. And the other thing is, they were supposed to have an emergency HF transmitter with an antenna that goes back to Kiribati, the main island. It didn't work. So we took around and repaired it. What we found out was the coax connector going in the back of the radio was so corroded it had been broken off and not working. So we just fixed it and everything seemed to work. Except they have a battery, 12-volt battery, that is powered by solar, that the solar wasn't working, so we fixed the solar too. So when we left, everything was working. Now, is it working now? Probably not, because they don't know how to fix it or they don't want to fix it, things like that themselves. Anyway, that's what in 4 days. That was, they do not brush their teeth. They do not take care of their idea of washing is to go in the ocean. This is again the typical dwelling. There's a water tank there, and notice the plumbing to get into the house, back into the house so they have water. And that is a chicken coop. Now, when the British left, they left everything they did not want. There was a lot of stuff they left. This is just a couple pictures. That's a truck. That is the old abandoned buildings. No, they did not tear them down. They just left them. They have people, some of the natives live in those facilities. Have they upgraded? No, they just moved in, put blankets or something over the windows, and just, that's how they live. An old bulldozer. Bucket loader. Notice the laundry. A lady and her daughter were living in that, or right around that bucket loader. Now, one of the guys was a scuba diver, and he did a couple pictures. He sent me this one with him coming out of the water, showing the old crane system that the British used to unload ships. Again, the only way they get supplies there or take away their phosphate was by ship. And again, there's the old part of the old crane system going from land out to where they could unload the ship close to shore, and the buildings, the control. You were talking about the power. This is the old power generator. They just left it. It just rotted away. There's on the side of it with all the gauges. Everything basically is to say they left it. Now, the island is coral and vegetation. And the coral is tough on your feet to walk on. I don't know how many of you ever been on islands before, but it is tough on the feet. Thank goodness I took 2 pair of tennis shoes with me. Now, I showed this because there's the chain. There's a chain from a ship. Goes right into the coral. So you can see how long that chain's been there. I could not find a date on it. I wish I could have. I'd like to find what the date was on that. That's the coral along the ocean. Around there, it's beautiful. And at nighttime, you can actually see the stars. There's no, how you want to say, no lights to blind you out. And not only that, this is off the beaten path for aircraft and ships, so you didn't see anything of ships and aircraft going through the sky. At least I did. That's the typical fruit. Reminds me of guacamole, which I hate. And I did not like this. Now, it does have a church. They have a priest that comes once a month. When the ship comes for supplies, he comes with the ship. And he does services once a month. They have a bell. This is the inside. I want you to notice something. What do you see?
Don't see, no fuse.
Correct. They don't sit on chairs. They bring mats. No one on the island owns a chair. They bring their own mats, and that's what they sit on. There's the altar. That is our team picture right there. Me right in front with the German. There's with our cues. You said you got us. The thing is I never got credit for it because I was there.
Yeah.
ARRL has since changed their policy. Because when I went to 2014, next year after that, when I went to Samoa for the 100th anniversary of ARRL, I stayed 3 weeks there. They gave me credit for Samoa for that time, but they didn't on this one. Now, the locals in the school and there made us some gifts. All the kids, the small kids, about 15 of them, made some gifts for us. You had a choice of taking this or this little turtle. I took the turtle. I have it at home. I was going to bring it, got halfway here and remembered it sitting on my dining room table. But I have that at home, a reminder that the kids literally made for us while we were there. And that's the thing they made for the whole team. The team captain got that. Anyway, I point this out, the boat. Out in the middle is the boat. Well, the boat was supposed to arrive on the 13th day. It didn't come. We have no communications because we have everything taken down, ready for the boat, packed up. The boat didn't come. We got there, it came the next day. And he was asked what happened. Oh, I had engine trouble. I had to stay back and fix it. I thought to myself, better to have it be a day late than have engine trouble in the open ocean. Navy guys, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, Terra Islands, the islands are right there. The main, those are the main full ones. These, actually, they're atolls. They're not islands. A little research. There's the government building. The government building is 12 feet above sea level. While we were there 2 days, because our plane did not arrive on time because it had engine trouble and was a day late. So we did a little sightseeing and we walked between islands at low tide. You don't dare do that at high tide, but at low tide you can walk between. That there is an old World War II gun emplacement. And by the way, that's a Japanese gun that the British bought from the Japanese in 1933 and put on the island for defense. Yeah, you're the same thing I am. Yeah. But anyway, you can see there's still 2 of them available. Now you can see how high the water level is, and that is high tide. It's not very high. When they have heavy storms, literally the water goes over the island. Now, World War II, right there, they have a memorial. Now, I have to, being that my uncle was in the Navy, and he was supposed to be in this area at the time afterwards. He never talked about it, but all I can tell you, he was a member of the task force with the USS USS Missouri, that task force. But anyway, I said, I'm going to go visit the time. I asked the desk where I was staying at the little cottage, how do you get to the War Memorial? He said, walk across the street, get on the bus, and tell the driver War Memorial. That's all you needed to say. I don't understand their language. So I get on the bus, tell her, and all I heard her say was sit. So I sat down. About 20 minutes later, she looked at me there. She pointed down a road. So I went down the road, and there it was. And I visited. Went back the same way. Went back, got on the bus, and told her the name of the place I was staying. She said, "Sit." Same lady too, because there's only a 1-lane road, 1.5-lane road over the whole island. That's it. And so I sat, and she stopped, and she pointed down a little trail down there and said, "That way." That's how I got back. Come to find out, the natives are very appreciative still of us there. It's one of the few countries in the world where the U.S. is still welcomed on their island. Anyway, questions, comments? And by the way, the LTC stands for Lieutenant Colonel. I retired in '97 before I did all this.
Too bad you couldn't have done it on the military time.
Say again?
Too bad you couldn't have done it in the military like them people.
No. There's no military. We do not have a military presence there. We have an ambassador that has a little cottage for his house there. But there is no, he doesn't have to have any military for defense whatsoever. So basically him and his staff are the only ones there. But there's other countries. They have farmed out, the country of Kiribati has farmed out their 200-mile radius fishing to China and Japan. So if only China and Japan is allowed to come in and fish around their country, they get paid for that. That's a lot of their income right there.
So when are you going on your next one?
I don't know. I'm not sure I'll be able to go on another one. January I had a knee replacement, and I'm not sure I can physically go anymore. But I did go to American Samoa and Samoa in 2014, a year after this. I spent 3 weeks over there. We did that for the 100th anniversary of ARRL. Remember the days where they activated all the different states? They had the deal, get all the states for the
W1AW went around.
Yes, right. Well, this was KHA. And we went over there and activated KHA. The good news is there was an airport there. And we flew in.
On
And
time? On time?
Yes. The airport is operated by the military.
What military?
We have a military presence in Samoa.
Oh, Samoa, okay.
Samoa. We do in Samoa. We have Border Patrol, we have FBI, we have military, and they also have a harbor that's a commercial harbor that is maintained by us. So, but yes.
I have two questions. One, you said you used all that fuel except like 455. Did you guys leave that or sell that to the locals, or did you actually ship all that stuff back?
No. Anything that was left over, we sold to the locals.
Yeah.
They wanted that fuel badly, and they were willing to pay for what they considered top dollar for the fuel.
What about like your generators and all that stuff? Did you
Generators
have to
went back to Tarawa.
Okay.
They were supposed to go in the Connex to be shipped home. But when we opened up the Connex at Jay's house, they were not there.
They were gone.
We don't, because I wanted one of the generators
Yeah.
as a backup. I wanted one of those 8.5s because they were fantastic.
Yeah.
And besides, I needed it for a mountaintop repeater backup.
Interesting. And then my other question is, how did you talk your wife into letting you do this? Because I need to know.
No, she was like, get out of here.
Well,
Take the radio.
she knew I wanted to go, and she says, and all I can say is, she said, yeah, we'll spend the money, and we'll just have to budget around it. And the good news is the year before that, my mom died. And for 5 years, we were spending our budget maintaining my mother in an assisted living facility. So we didn't have that expense anymore. So we were still on the limited budget
Fair.
at that time.
What did they consider top dollar for 4 gallons of fuel?
I don't know, it was not, I did not find out.
I mean, they have nothing, what, you know?
Well,
Was that a dozen fish
No,
a gallon, or, you know?
the council members maintain all the currency of the island.
Oh, wow.
So they had money, but they're scroungers with money too.
Right.
They have to be.
One of your photos showed motorbikes, and I was wondering how they fueled those.
That's where their once a month supply brings fuel and everything. And it's unloaded in that dock by a small boat because the boat can't get in the harbor anymore.
So you said there was no power on the island, except solar power, or what was there any?
The community center had solar power that operated 2 batteries in parallel to operate their PA set. That's the only power. All the buildings that you saw where the locals live, no power. When the sun goes down, it's dark. Literally. Yes,
What year did you say this was?
2013,
Okay.
November. That's one of the things I'll never forget. My wife said, and I wasn't there for your 70th birthday. And I said, no, I asked if you wanted to come and you said no. I gave her the option. She said no.
You could have spent time with me, honey, if you truly loved me, but you didn't want to go.
You didn't want to go. But she did go in 2000 when I went to Taiwan, to Myanmar, which is old Burma. And we stayed at a luxury resort on an island.
No,
For 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So she did go with me on that one.
Is there a lot of hams that go there? Is that like one of the things? Is that a common thing or no?
No, that's a very uncommon. What your DXpeditions that you have, like the one that went to Peter Island, the one that went to, what was it? Ned Stearns just went to the one they had where they went to, they started at Falkland Islands, south, the islands further down toward Antarctica. He does a good presentation on that. But those are tough to go on. And the way they pick a DXpedition now is they figure out what is the rarest country that's on the list.
Got it.
Right now, North Korea is number 1. All right? But you got a 1 through 50. When we went, this was number 25. So it was fairly required by a lot of people. But that's how you pick them.
Sure.
At the same time, they went to Wake Island. There was a group on Wake Island. We contacted them. There's a group that just couple years, last year, because my antenna system's down, I couldn't get them, but they went to Midway. Now, those are the type, I don't mind the islands in the warm climate. I'm not quite sure I want to do the cold stuff.
I don't want to, and I live in Ohio.
Well, last winter was not bad.
Oh, wait.
I know, that's what my son says. Keep waiting, it'll get worse. The only problem I had is 10 days after I had my knee surgery, I was out we had that 2 inches of snow in January. I was out shoveling snow and my wife was very mad.
Yeah.
But anyway, any other questions? No, that's it. By the way, that QSL card there was made for me by my brother's daughter's husband, Mike Ingold, who at the time was working at Disney World as a cartoonist. He called me up one day, he says, "You still want a QSL card?" And I said, "Yep." So he made that with me with the military and the whole works. I got a big poster that I hang on the wall, and I had that made that into my cards. So that's how that came about. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Clifford. We really appreciate it.
Interesting.
The